What up? WINBUSH here, and today I'm excited to show you guys how to use FlowMaps from World Creator and bring them into Cinema 4D to render out with Redshift and using Quixel's Megascans. Now in part one, we're going to be working in World Creator. We're going to make the flow map, so we have like this crater scene. We're going to make like lava streaks coming down the side, and then in part two of this tutorial, we're going to be working in Cinema 4D. We're going to take materials from Quixel's Megascans. We're going to bring those into Redshift. We're going to use our flow maps to kind of blend our materials in, and we're going to come up with a scene that looks like this. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Okay, so I have my creator bit out here in World Creator. And so if you look, it's just pretty simple. If I go over to my filters in the upper right hand corner, you can see I'm just using the crater, some more filters in here, the sediment complex, etc, etc. Nothing too fancy going on here. Actually, I'll put this up on my Gumroad, so if you guys want to download it for free so you guys can follow along, because I don't really want to go through these steps. This is all about how to use the flow map and how to export that out for Cinema 4D. And so to get started, I'm going to go to my upper right hand corner where it says textures, and then I have a new layer already added here, but if you don't have it, just click add layer. And then I'm going to name this one, I'm going to just name this textures, because we're not going to do anything too complex. And then under textures here, click add. And then under directories, I want to click World Creator. And if you scroll all the way down, you'll notice that we actually now have one that says white, and that's plain white. And the version I'm using is 2.2.0 F5. And I believe this is the latest version as of now, but it looks like they added this in, so we can actually click on this and we could just add a solid texture to our scene, so we don't have to add rocks or any of the other textures. We could just work with solids here, which I want to do because I'm going to texture everything in Cinema 4D later. So I just want to get my basic textures down here in World Creator and then export these out. So for my layer here under tag, I'm going to just name this one base. It's going to be my base layer. And then under shade, I'm just going to drag this all the way down to black. And that's all I'm going to do. I'm using this as my base layer just to kind of represent the lava rocks that I'm going to texture later on inside of Redshift. And so now if I come back up to add, I'm going to click on World Creator again, and then scroll down, make another white one, click add and close down here in the bottom right hand corner. And I'm going to name this one, let's say, I'll just name this one white under my tag. And then I'm going to come down under roughness, click this, and you can see that we have our white texture kind of fading in with our black texture here. So for my steps, I'm going to just bring this down to 1, so we get a little bit of fading going on in here. And then I'm going to actually go down even further on my right hand side here, down to height select, and check this on, and just going to leave this at default. But basically I just want to do this so that I can add a second texture in here whenever I go into Cinema 4D and kind of just have those blend around in there. And so now for the final step, I want to add my lava streaks that we have in my thumbnail. Let me double click this open. And so this is what I essentially built. And so what we're going to do now is add these lava streaks here, and then I'll show you how to do that with the flow map. So I'm going to add another texture here. So I'll go over here to my right hand side, click add, do it again, World Creator, come down, make a white texture, hit add and close. And then I'm going to just name this one red. And then under my shade, I'm going to just make this as red as you can get. And again, this is just for representation of what I'm going to export with my maps. And so from here, let's go down to our texture distribution, look for flow enabled. Let's click on this. And now you can see we're starting to get some streaks going along in World Creator here. So there's a few attributes that I want to play around with down here. I was playing with this earlier and I wrote down the exact measurements that I used. And so, but with World Creator, this is all about just playing around and coming up with something cool. And so for my flow range, I did a flow range of 2 to 100. And again, you can kind of play around with these assets until you get something that you like. And then for my lower smoothness. Let's say I left it at 1.2. My water factor, let's bring this up to 0.03. Okay, cool. Then my water smoothness, let's bring this up to just under 1, so 0.97. And you can see we're starting to get some more streaks, especially along the ground here. And so if we want to define this even more, we could go up to the General tab here in the upper right hand corner. Click on this and you'll see we have flow map properties. And so I have a pretty beefy computer. I'm just going to knock my resolution all the way up to the max, so 8192. And give us a second to kick in, and you can see we're starting to get some really sharp defined edges here along our lava streaks. And so for my iteration, I'm going to crank this up to like 200. And sometimes you have to give it a second to calculate here. And you can see we're starting to get some nice patterns in here. For my viscosity, let's bring this down to like 0.59. There you go. You can see we're starting to pull around or pull away from the ground plane here a little bit. So let's go down to my rain strength and do 0.6. And you see we're starting to pull away a lot more. And so what I wanted was just a little bit of variety in the streaks along the ground here. I didn't want the whole thing just over covered with all these streaks. And so for my rain probability, let's leave this around 1. Evaporation, we could bring this up to like 190 to evaporate some of those puddles on the ground there. So 190. There we go. All right, cool. And then yeah, that's about it. And so we have some cool streaks going along our crater. We have some going along the ground. And I think this might actually be the position that I did my thumbnail from. So if I pull the camera down to like the ground plane here, pull up my thumbnail, you can kind of see, yeah, this is actually exactly where I took the screenshot for the thumbnail. I exported everything out in the Cinema 4D. You can see some rock cliffs here. I actually brought those in from Megascans. That's something that you could do if you want, but let's export these out so that we can use these in Cinema 4D now. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit just so we can see everything here. And in my upper right hand corner, there's an icon here, second from the right, called export. And so first, what I want to do is I'm going to export my height data so that I can actually bring my crater into Cinema 4D. And so for my select format, I'm going to use a PNG 16, which is a 16-bit. And then I'm going to leave everything else the same here. Actually, I think you could flip the X, because I think it goes in reverse in Cinema. I might be wrong, but I believe that's what I did before. And so let me find where I want to save this stuff out at. And go World Creator and Images. So I'm going to just, actually I could leave this, just name this height map. So if you look down here, it's going to name it heightmap.png. Click Save. And then this will take a second or two to export. You can see it's loading up here on the right hand side. Usually depends on the resolution and how dense your object is how long this is going to take here, but we just worked with the default, so everything should move pretty fast here depending on your system. And it looks like we are good to go right now. All right, cool. All right, so now I'm going to go over to heat maps, and I'm going to go under select type and go under textures. And as you can see, we have those 3 textures that we made. So the one that was tagged base, the one that was tagged white, and the one, oh, I thought I made it red. Let me go back to my textures. See what this is. Oh, no, this is default red. So let me switch this just to red, just so it's a little bit cleaner. Okay, so now we have our base, our white, and our red. And what this is going to do is actually going to give us a mask for each one of these textures, so we can bring these into Redshift and mask out our materials. So I'm going to click on export again, find where I want to save it at. I'm going to just leave this at heatmap.png, because it's actually going to add the subtext to it so you'll know which is what. So I'm going to hit export on this, wait for this to export out, and then I'm going to let this crank out, and then I'm going to see you guys on the flip side for part 2 of this tutorial, where I'm going to show you how to do everything in Cinema 4D and Redshift. So I'll catch you on the flip side. Okay, so now I got Cinema 4D open. I'm going to come over to my render settings here. Make sure that I have Redshift selected, because I'm going to be using the Quixels bridge to bring over my materials. So everything else here looks fine. I'm doing 1920 1080. Doesn't really matter about frame rate. And so what I want to do now is come over to my cube, click and hold that down, come over to relief, and then I'm going to bring in the material that we had brought in from World Creator before, the height map one. So we find our height map PNG. I'm going to open this. I'm going to click no, because I don't want to make a copy of this. And so now we have our crater here. Let me click on regular shading, no wireframe. So it doesn't look quite like how it does in World Creator. That's because we have to add a little bit more depth to it. So my width segments and my depth segments, I'm gonna just go overboard and do 900 by 900. Add a lot of detail in here to make it really dense. And I'm also gonna make it a little bit larger. I know World Creator works in meters, and Cinema 4D by default is in centimeters, but I'm just going to keep it at default centimeters. And I'm just going to do 8192 and do 8192 here. Make this really, really large. And then I'm going to bring this up by like 2500. There we go. So now it looks like it does in World Creator. I mean, I could make it 1:1 scale like it is in World Creator, but then that will make our render times jump up. So just use your discretion as to how big you want to make this. So our next step is I'm going to come down to create down here in my materials window, and I'm going to make a Redshift material. Give this a second to kick in, and then I'm going to click on, actually down here where it says RS material, I'm going to just rename this RS WINBUSH, so that I know what my material is. And I'm going to click and drag this over to my relief here. And I can actually change this to, I just name this WINBUSH too. I mean, I was going to name it Crater, but WINBUSH is cooler. So now I'm going to come back to my material here, go to my edit shader graph, click this to bring over my shader graph window. So if you're familiar with Redshift, you know exactly what this is. So what I want to do is I'm going to actually delete my RS material here. And I'm going to come over to my left hand side here where it says nodes. And I'm actually going to bring in a material blender. So this is going to be the basis of how we're going to build out our material. Because in order to get those maps to work the way we want to, we're going to have to use the blender node to blend all those mats in from the FlowMaps. And so what I want to do now is I'm going to go to Quixel Bridge. You can use any materials that you want, but I like using Quixel materials because with the new bridge, you can actually just export everything out fast and it'll bring it into Redshift for you as long as you have it selected. So I'm going to go over to my export settings, make sure I have export to Cinema 4D selected. I'm going to click export here. And if you want a better rundown on how to use Bridge with Cinema 4D, I have a tutorial for that, which I'll link in up above me here. And so make sure you click on that if you want a more in-depth view on how to use that. So let me, it looks like it brought it into Cinema. Yep, there we go. And it actually replaced my material that I had there before. So if you have your object selected and you do the quick thing with the bridge like that, it's going to automatically put it on here. It's going to give you a Redshift object tag. And it's going to put your material on here. But I'm just going to delete that off and put my WINBUSH one back on there. Like so. Okay, cool. So I have my shader graph here from my WINBUSH. And what I'm going to do is copy and paste that material that I just brought in, the Hawaiian lava one. So if I click on that and then I select all these here, if I click on copy, then click back on my WINBUSH material and then click paste, I actually copy and pasted those material attributes into my shader graph here. So all I have to do now is go from out color to my material blender, and I'm going to make this my base color. And then for my displacement, I'm just going to use the displacement from that as well. So I'm going to drag this over here. Let's try to organize it a little bit. So it's going to get a little messy in here once we start adding other materials. So I want to work as neat as possible. So I'm going to bring my displacement that I brought over, drag it to my output, and click on displacement. And there we have everything hooked up the way that we need it to be. And so if I go to my viewport here, and then let me click on my render view. Let's just click render to see what it's looking like. Give us a second to pop in. Okay, so that's what our material looks like right now, just laid across our crater here, which doesn't look very good. It looks extremely large. So instead of normally what we would do to shrink it down is you click on your material here in your objects window, and then you would just take the length U and the length V and drag those down like 25% or so, and that would scale everything down. But since we're going to be using multiple materials in here, that will totally screw up our UV. And so what we want to do is, let's go back to our shader graph in our WINBUSH material, and we want to go under math, and we're going to go to scalar, and then we're going to go to ABS scalar and drag that node in here. And so what this is going to do is whatever you have connected to this ABS scalar here, it's going to give us control over that particular material. So if I click and drag this over to my AO material that I have here, and then go to General UV Remap and click on Scale, now I'll be able to scale that with this ABS, if that makes sense. And so I'm going to actually connect this to everything that I have in here that I want to be controlled by that ABS node. So even my roughness map here, I'm going to go down, click General UV Map Scale, and then for my normal map here as well, let's scale this down as well. And then I'm going to do it for my displacement map here. So click and drag this over to the blue, General UV Remap, and scale. So now you see that we have this slider over here that just says input 0. So if I drag this up to like 30, and then let's look at what it looks like in our render view, and click play here. And now you see our material is actually scaled down, in which, let me see, we could probably bring this up to like 25 maybe. Yeah, so something like that looks good right there. So our next step is we want to bring in a second material to kind of blend in with our original material here. And so in order to show you, like give you a really good view of what it's going to look like, instead of bringing in the material first, I'm going to just bring in a solid color so that you can see how it's actually going to blend. And so let me go to my material here, my material node. I'm going to drag this in, and I'm going to go to base properties, and I'm going to just make this something that's really visible, like hot green. So let me click and drag this out a little bit, and we want to bring it to our material blend. So I'm going to try to organize this a little bit so we can make it easier for you guys to see. So I have my material blender here. I'm going to click and drag this out to layer 1. So layer 1 color, I'm going to click on that one, and what that's going to do is it's going to pipe in this green material. I'm going to actually bring the reflection down as well because we don't need that, but it's going to pipe in this green material into over top of our base material, but we're going to need one of our maps so that it's going to cut it out. So if I go back to our images that we made, let me click on the one that we named white, and that's just going to leave these little accent in here. So this is exactly what it's going to mask out. The white is going to be, you know, if you know anything about these maps, the white is what's really going to be see-through, I guess you could say, and then black is not. Yeah, I don't think I explained that right, but you'll get the picture once I drag this in here. So let me drag this in. Okay, so I have my mask here now, and I'm gonna click and drag this over to layer 1 and blend color 1. And so what that's going to do is if I click on my render view, click play, give us a second to kick in here. And now you can kind of see how our material is going to blend in over top of our other material. And the reason that I use the green material is just to kind of give you guys a glimpse of how it's going to look, because sometimes it's so fine that you can't really tell if you're blending the materials or not. So I'll usually bring in a solid color first, see how it's going to look, and then I'll bring in my material that I actually want to blend in there. So I'm going to click off of my object here so it doesn't replace anything. I'm going to go back into Quixel Bridge, and I'm going to go to this other lava stone material here, and I'm going to make sure we have export to Cinema 4D. I'm going to click export, export successful. So let me close this down. Okay, so yeah, now we see in our lower left hand corner we have another Hawaiian material. So I'm going to double click on my WINBUSH original material. Let me zoom out here a little bit. I'm going to click back on this other material, and I'm just going to copy the top images here, because I don't think you could do multiple displacement maps. I might be wrong, but I don't think that you can. So we're just going to keep the displacement map from our base color, and we're just going to bring in this top information here. So our AO, our diffuse, our roughness, and our normal map. So I'm going to go over to edit, click copy, come to my WINBUSH material, go down to edit, and click paste. And then let me drag this down here. And I'm actually going to delete my material here that I was making green. I'm going to delete that, and let's replace it with the material that we just dragged in, which is this one here. So I'm going to drag this over to my material blender, go to layer 1, layer color 1, and now we have that replaced out. So we just have one more material to make here. This is already starting to get a little bit messy. But next we want to bring in our glow. Actually, before we bring in our glow material, let's make another ABS scaler so that we can scale this material as we want. So same process as before. Just go to General UV Map Scale. Same thing for albedo. Same thing for roughness. And then same thing for the normal map. Let me click all these here and drag these down a little bit. So yeah, depending on how complex you want your material, it can start to get a little bit crazy in here, but since you're the one that's building it, you should know exactly what everything's piping into. I just kind of like to separate these a little bit, just to give a little bit of organization to the mayhem here. Okay, so I'm going to click and drag these down. Try to make this center. Alright, so next we want to add our glow effect. And so I'm going to come over to Material, drag this down here, and then under Overall, let me actually make this larger. Okay, so now over here on the right hand side under Overall, I'm going to click on this, and under Admission, I'm going to actually make this orange. So I'm going to just come over here, make this somewhere around there, click OK, and then for my admission weight, I'm just going to crank this up so we really get a good glow out of it. So I'm going to make this like 10. Click OK, or not OK, just click enter, and then I'm going to click and drag this over to my material blend here and make this layer color 2. Alright, cool, so we have that piped in. And now I'm going to go back to my images, and the one that we had labeled red, this is actually going to be where all of our lava flow is going to pipe in from. So I'm going to click and drag this from my Explorer window into my shader graph. I'm going to click no. Okay, so now I have my matte in here for my lava. I'm going to click out color over to material blender, come down to layer 2, blend color 2, and click, and we should have everything piped in now. So I can close out of this material window. Let me go over to my render view. Let me click play. We should see our lava streaks all along our crater here. So there we go. That's how we mask out our flow maps and bring them into Redshift in the Cinema 4D. Now, I know if you notice my thumbnail, I have the lava streaks really glowing in here. I have some rock piles that's from Megascans, and I have some depth of field. That was all composited in After Effects. Let me show you. I have my other window opened up here. So this is basically, here, let me take it down, turn off my lighting. So yeah, so these rock piles came from Megascans. I just kind of set dressed, kind of just laid them out into the scene here. And then if I go to my AOV manager, what I did was I brought in an emission tag, I brought in a depth of field pass, and just a little reflection there. And I rendered those out, and then I composited everything into After Effects, which if you want my After Effects project, I can upload that as well to Gumroad. But yeah, I just used some glow filters in there and everything. So if I go to render view, you can actually see, like, I have an emission tag, I have a depth tag. Actually, let me render this out for you guys so you guys can see it. It might take a couple of seconds because I'm using brute force here. But yeah, you see, yeah, there's my reflection pass, my depth pass. Let me see, prepping for ray tracing. Should only be a couple more seconds now. But the basis of this material, or of this tutorial, was basically just showing you how you can bring your flow maps into Redshift or any mask from Real Creator into Redshift and be able to render those out. So yeah, so there's the scene here. And then, like I said, you can see the glows kind of illuminating the rocks and everything in here. If I turn on my dome light and my area light, there we go. So now you can see we get a little bit more dramatic lighting in here. You can see my depth pass that I have here. A little reflection off the rock since it's a little wet from the lava. And then of course the emissions. So you can actually take all of these different passes and composite them in After Effects and just have a ton of fun with them. Yeah, so hopefully this helped you guys out. For all the people out there using World Creator and Cinema 4D, hopefully this shows you guys how you can take your mats from Real Creator and then bring them into Redshift to kind of blend everything together. And of course, Quixel Megascans, the materials are great, and so it's real easy taking your stuff from Bridge and bringing it into Cinema 4D using Redshift as well. So hopefully this helped you guys out. Let me know down below. And of course, I'll see you guys on the next tutorial. Keep creating. I'll see you again. Take care.